Non-Americans who have been to the US. What is the weirdest thing about America that Americans don't realize is weird? I'm from the UK and now live in MSN. The first thing is how friendly everyone seems to be. It may be the Minnesota nice talking, but seriously, everyone is welcoming and friendly. The first time I flew to the States, I sat next to this American lady and we got talking. I explained I was visiting my partner for the first time and how nervous and excited I was. We talked until we boarded, and then once we landed, she went into mother mode, let me use her phone to call my partner, went through security and baggage claim with me, even walked me out to where my partner was waiting for me, just to make sure I was safe. She then gave me all her details and emphasized that if anything happens, or if I needed any help, I could call her and she'd help me. I found out she worked for St. Jude's, and even though I never needed to call her, knowing I had someone there made me feel so safe, and I really hope she's doing well today. I went there for university, and honestly, Americans just do a lot of little things that are generally nice. Holding the door open, smiling if you make eye contact while walking, randomly saying a quick greeting, etc. Random compliments too, and I never got the vibe that people were just making them up like some of my friends who haven't been, but say, if someone complimented someone's clothes/hair, whatever it seemed like they meant it, they just didn't seem to hold back the random thoughts and said them out loud. I didn't even really notice the door holding thing after the first few days, but when I went back to my country, I actually missed it, lol. Not that I ever expected someone to hold the door even in America, but the absence of it and quick smiles was surprisingly noticeable back home. As a Brit, how amazingly and genuinely friendly you are. How enamored you are with British culture and people. I was invited to a BBQ in a public place by someone that I met because he liked the t-shirt I was wearing. I felt like some sort of celebrity. I'm an average guy, but everyone wanted to chat to me. I've traveled extensively and have met many other nationalities whilst in their country. I've been made to feel welcome in almost all, but how I was treated once my accent was heard in the US was on another level. Thank you for making me feel so welcome. I've had several amazing trips to US. They hold a very special place in my heart. We effing love British accents here for some reason. I had a British client once showing me her office find a door to be unexpectedly locked, and she said, "Bloody hell," right next to me, in real life. And I cannot express how delighted I was. That was like 15 years ago, and I'm still tickled pink by that interaction. Felt like I was in a Harry Potter movie. Y'all can strike a conversation with a tree. You literally don't need anyone to respond, and you'll yabber away relentlessly. It's a generalization, as I know there are some quiet Americans, but I was just down in a Publix trying to decide what beer to buy, and some woman suddenly talking to me about how she met her husband. I love it. I'm a fairly quiet dude. New Zealand's a fairly reserved place, so just being able to stream your consciousness out like that is just something truly remarkable. I married an American. She talks enough for both of us. Americans can strike up a sincere conversation and not be weird about it. No one precedes a question with "sorry to be weird." They don't feel embarrassed if they don't know something. They can listen to you tell a story without jumping in to tell a vaguely similar story related to them. Americans tend to have tremendous social skills, though it's strange because some clearly don't appreciate how f***ing nuts they are. I have lived in US my whole life, and I have a friend who is really outgoing. When we go shopping at any store, he literally jokes around with everyone that passes by. Even to me, this is wild. I'm generally open to chit-chat, but he is non-stop laughing and playing with complete strangers. It's honestly so funny to be around. It's big, like really big. I'm from the UK, and 2 years ago, I did Route 66. Even taking the interstate, so not actual Route 66, but you get the idea, it took 4 days of 12+ hours driving to do it. It's goddamn huge. Conversely, my wife and I went to UK for the first time 2 years ago. We did the usual sights that a lot of tourists do, but part of our trip we rented a car and just went driving around from place to place. Saw a lot of the countries technically that way. Had a great time doing that, especially just driving right-hand drive for the first time. Seems most people we spoke to along the way were astounded by the distances we were going in any given day. To us, Californians, it wasn't even a second thought. Prescription drug ads on TV that casually say side effects may include death. I was shocked. Edit. The number of people who are simply talking about the legal requirement/logic behind the death warning just proves my point. In most other countries, you can't advertise prescription drugs, especially those with egregious side effects that may, in fact, include death. In my country, you have OTC drugs like cold and headache drugs being advertised, or basic supplements. This wasn't a comment about the death part, just the extent of healthcare corporatization that allows prescription meds to be promoted like candy. Edit 2. Also, The question was about the weirdest thing that's normal in America, so I'm going with the above. That said, many comments are talking about how friendly Americans are, and I completely agree. It's just that while that was surprising, it was a pleasant, lovely surprise. Not weird. You folks are lovely, even if you can buy death candy from TV. I'm an American, but I'm always surprised that nobody in these threads mentions all of the self-storage we have here. There's storage units everywhere, and they're being built all the time. People have so much stuff that they can't fit it in their homes and rent out space for even more stuff. It's nuts to me how huge the US is. The fact that you could be on a plane for 5 hours without leaving the country, that and time zones. When I was a kid, I couldn't grasp why US TV shows were on at X9C. Lived in the US for 4 years, and here's some stuff that constantly threw me. Sales tax not being included in the price, got pretty used to it after 4 years, but it still occasionally caught me off guard. Healthcare bills, tailgating on highway, even people complaining about tailgaters were themselves often tailgating. Porch sitting, people sitting on their porch and watching passersby. Distances, drove coast to coast. I thought it would never end. Most men being pretty knowledgeable about cars. Drive-through ATMs never stopped being funny to me for some reason. How easy it is as an outsider to make friends. You guys are nice as hell. I moved here back at the start of the year. I've got my small group of friends back in NZ and thought I'd have trouble making new ones. But Americans have been some of the friendliest people I've met. Weirdest thing for me, visiting Madison, Wisconsin, was the absolute top cheese curd selection and cheap and delicious local beer. I actually kind of fell in love with Madison, Wisconsin. It was so beautiful in December. Just quite a small place, but I pictured my life there. Too bad you can't really get a decent job without a doctor's degree there. But yeah, you guys are friendly, mild-mannered, and lovely. Man, now that it's starting to snow in my home country, I'm just thinking about Madison again. You rule, Wisconsinites. Know that edit? Wow, this became my most upvoted post. Thank you. Greetings from Finland, y'all. I hope to get back there someday. Somebody mentioned that there's plenty of work in Madison, and I'm sure you're right. I just work in IT, and it might be a bit hard to climb to the stage I'm on with my degree over there. It is sad. I would love to live in a Wisconsin house. Just a slow life would be perfect. American here, but something I didn't realize was weird until I traveled out of the country. Some of our coins don't have the denomination value on them. For instance, our 10-cent piece just says 1 dime. How TF are tourists supposed to know how much a dime is worth? Oh, well, it's the smallest, so it must be worth the least, right? Wrong. I love our country, LOL. Indian with dark brown skin here. Went to Dallas, supposedly hub of white folks hating immigrants, and nowhere I was greeted with angry person, and I rarely saw people carrying guns. People were friendly and forthcoming, completely opposite of what news says. Somewhat weird thing I noticed was how confident majority of people I met were, especially in the situations where they were completely wrong. All minor things though. For example, it was around 2017 when I went there and tried to pay by tapping the card. This young lady was adamant that it wouldn't work without Google/Apple Pay, and I've to insert my card in the slot. The look of surprise on her face was something to look est when I insisted and shown her it actually worked. But just like all the countries I've visited, news always display worst people when in reality, people are generally fine. Quick edits because I can't reply all messages. First of all, I really don't want to offend anyone or say something I disliked, but rather something out of ordinary because of the expectations. I'm aware of concealed carry, but heard a lot about how people are pushing for open carry as well. So just by going by media, I assumed guns would be abundant and was pleasantly surprised. Card story was not to highlight technology gap, but rather one weird thing I found how confident Americans are even when they shouldn't be. Again, often outlier for my visit. I can totally understand gaps between city and rural areas. I was just recounting my experience. And finally, one of the greatest human moments of my life came in Dallas when I was in Lyft with this lady and her presumably 6-7-year-old kid who clearly had ADHD. I'm always afraid of children because I have this feeling I might accidentally hurt them. But this lady not only introduced her kid to me, but encouraged we talk. Now, it may not look very big to anyone else. This was the first time I was talking to someone with ADHD. That too a kid. And this kid was amazing with so much love when talking. So despite whatever others says, at Dallas will always hold special place in my heart. How crazy friendly you guys are. Other than the odd crazy guys in the subways of New York or Chicago, everyone I've met made me feel that something's wrong with us Germans. Why can't we be just happy and nice to each other? 2. How nobody uses the sidewalk. Like, I was told not to bother walking to a place because XYZ is too far away for walking. Turns out it's like 500 miles down the road. Why bother using the car for that? Oh, now I remember. Because the sidewalk just stops in the middle of nowhere. Funny how that works. how you guys are really far when it comes to fighting racism, in the sense that it's a problem that is openly worked on. Yet when you go into the city, races, for lack of a better term, are still very much segregated. Very rarely did I see black kids walking around with whites or whites with Asian, etc. It felt kind of odd. 4. Saying thank you to the bus driver. From a German POV, this is weird, but I like it and decided to import this one. 5. Everyone is like, thank you for your service, which is not happening here at all. From my point of view, you value military over everything else, when you might should spend less on military and more on the public as a whole. The infrastructure has seen better days. The people can't afford a doctor's appointment or a dentist. The richest nation on earth, and yet I've seen kids living on the streets. This is super weird and would be unheard of here. But at least you've got, what, 12 carrier groups going for 14 or so? 6. The best pizza in the world is the Chicago-style deep dish. I've traveled a fair bit and was disappointed in almost everything I ate in Rome, but when I went to Chicago, not knowing what to expect, I was surprised by the best f***ing pizza I've ever had. That too was so weird. Like you overvalue products from Europe when the really good stuff usually comes from the Americas. To be fair, we kind of live off of that marketing. Italian oil, Greek olives, French wine, etc. For me, what was shocking was how sweet a lot of food was. I mean things I would never expect to be sweet like bread or mayonnaise. Also, the size of portions of food. I sometimes was not able to eat half of the portions I was served. And how nice people were. Really amazing thing. So, American farm laws deeply subsidize agricultural, especially corn, so that farmers can keep producing and food stays readily available even during prolonged periods of crisis. This means the average consumer can buy corn below cost since the government is essentially paying for it. One downside of this policy is that high fructose corn syrup is stupidly cheap because the food companies get the corn it's made from almost free. So they put that stuff in everything, and I do mean absolutely everything, to enhance flavor. Once upon a time, most of the major food companies in the US were owned by Big Tobacco. These were the guys who decided to make cigarettes more addictive to increase sales, and they applied that same philosophy to food, using science and dirt cheap, high fructose corn syrup to make hyper-delicious foods so people would buy more. That's also why Americans are so fat. Friendly, helpful, polite, positive, inward-looking, monocultural, can-do, massive consumption of resources with little awareness of this. All in all, an amazing country full of extraordinary people. Hi, now I realize USMCA is big, so I don't think everyone is like this everywhere in all of the states. There's few things though. Please don't take this the wrong way. It's just my honest opinion, because you asked and how I view it. It varies so much from people around Europe compared to people around in the US too. And sometimes people in European countries really have the same stereotype. But when you cross to a bordering country, they are very different. It's like you almost always needs a car. That's one thing I understand, because US is so big. But I like in Europe you can take a stroll almost anywhere in any country, except some rural areas, poor hygiene and fat people, and lots of unhealthy fast food restaurants. Like public toilets and just random homeless/drug addicts, people you can see almost everywhere in some streets areas, and people talking crazy to themselves. But I'll get to that point next. Huge gap between rich and poor, lots of homeless but empty homes too. It was sad to see streets full of homeless and drug addicts. Awesome shopping malls. People can be really friendly and help you, welcoming. People are very kind and like to help those who can be worse out. People can stare a lot at you for no reason. Never felt that kind of staring in Europe. I consider myself an average-looking guy and would be boring to look at. Tipping. I hate it and it sucks. The employer and the company should make sure you can live of your salary. Non-free healthcare is scary and probably the worst thing in the country that I despise the most. If US could turn that one around, I would be really impressed and think much better of the US. Beautiful countryside, like almost everywhere. Even in New York, I think it's so vast, but you can get out to the nature very quickly. I can't endorse this enough, see the US nature people. It's so cool you both have Alaska and Hawaii. You have a great history and rescued most of the world during some of the worst times in the world we all ever had. Be proud of that and your ancestors. I love that fact about the USA. How aggressive your news is delivered to you. How the smallest of headlines can be delivered like it's a nationwide red alert and you should look over your shoulder at every waking moment. No wonder y'all are packing an entire armada for your daily walk to the store. Okay, Major. I Heart USA rant incoming. They say the US is unsafe, there's racism and gun violence and fentanyl needles lying around. And while that is all somewhat true, it's only applicable to some locations. People are really nice and helpful. The surroundings are very clean. I can walk around the streets at 4 a.m. without bothering to glance over my shoulder after every 2 steps. I've been here 9 years, lived in 6 very different states, and visited 40. And this country has helped heal my soul. The US is often portrayed to be overcrowded, busy, and disorganized, especially NY, LA, and Chicago. But even in those cities, the crowd is very disciplined and structured. People respect cues. Even the road traffic is very disciplined about staying in one lane. Media often portrays Americans as hypersexual, lazy slackers who only eat greasy junk food, but most of the people here have a strong value system and are constantly working towards self-improvement and their professional commitments. The job market in America is said to be f***ed up post-COVID. That's true to some extent all over the world, but in my experience, America has a job for all, whether they are high school dropouts or triple graduates. All they need to have is the willpower to work and a thirst for the mighty dollar. It is not as competitive as Asian countries. Most establishments actually respect their employees and treat them as human beings. It has a pretty decent work culture compared to my home country, where your life is nothing besides work, commute, and sleep. Haven't found this, so will answer. I've been in NYC, so it might not be representative of the whole country, but I was absolutely shocked by how wasteful everything was. Everywhere we went for a coffee, the cups were disposable, even if we were sitting there. Double bagging everything, like why? Everything is packaged in plastic, even if there's no good reason for it. Everything goes to the trash. As someone quite eco-conscious, I've never been that wasteful in my whole life. Advert breaks interrupting shows a lot more often than UK. Then, recaps and rehash clips throughout the program about things that happened 15 minutes ago. It felt like I had ADHD when I caught Oak Island on holiday this week in Oak Island. Look at the shiny car for sale. Could this be treasure? Buy these burgers? Could the thing we just found be treasure? Warning, taking this drug will make you grow another head. It's wood. Here's a lizard selling insurance. Yay, it's wood again. Actually, we are really glad it's wood because Super Bowl something. Your portion sizes at restaurants. It's no wonder you have people who can barely move under their own power. Restaurant meals are often 2 to 3 meals for me. You take the leftovers home for lunch the next day. 24/7. Political news. That there forever seems to be a big election coming up. Canadian news, by comparison, is so quiet. Yes, there is political news, but there is a limitation on how far in advance of the election that parties can actually campaign. It's about 2 months if I remember correctly. So, for 2 months, everyone focuses hard on federal politics, plus the media, have an election, and then the country mostly chills out again. The American political system, on the other hand, seems committed to inducing long-term anxiety disorders. I love America. Have been twice this year, and many times before. I find weird. You do not want to give the federal government too much power, but then you allow HOAs to terrorize you. Toll roads and bridges everywhere, including different systems to collect these tolls. Best country in the world to eat healthy, but also the country where it is easiest to eat unhealthy if you do not pay attention. Deserts and restaurants are gigantic and serve multiple people. Some cities are entirely built for cars. Which party you vote for becomes your identity. Your healthcare cost is insane. The rest of the world thanks you for financing all the drug research. But the average American gets really shitty healthcare considering how much money you spend on it as a country. I wouldn't say weird, but not what I'm used to. The friendliness of Americans. They are super easy to strike up a conversation with. You might not get into deep conversations or make a lifelong friend, but you can very easily have a good chat with them. And the portion sizes in restaurants. Dear God, the general kindness of people in the States. I was in the UK from ages 6-10, and instead of being bullied when I returned, I was welcomed back by kids I knew from kindergarten. Thinking back on it some 40+ years later, it was quite touching and adorable. The kids from my schools in Wales and Manchester were very good at fighting and beat me bloody the first day of school. I was PIP from South Park. The way y'all sob over and praise your military. You've got announcements at the airport, priority parking, special discounts, etc. for guys who, realistically, are no more deserving of hero worship than any other job. The obsession with showing your patriotism by flying a flag in your yard is also weird, as is having to pledge your allegiance as part of your school day. Why can't you just include taxes in your prices? And don't tell me, oh, it's for transparency because different states have different rates. Nobody is really arriving at the checkout and thinking, I wonder what the tax on this is. It's only country where a $2 item becomes $2.46 at the till. Dear visitors to the United States, a lot of us are very normal people and we do our best not to draw attention to ourselves. When we travel aboard, we try to blend in as best as possible. Yours truly, a normal American citizen. Thank you for watching. Write comments, put likes. Do not forget to watch other videos.